long hold. And immediately go as soon as the arms came down. Oxford on the Middlesex station, nearer the camera. Cambridge having won the toss on the far side, which is the Surrey station. As we come down Fulham Reach, the boat houses will come in. Look at those packed crowds. Still a fascination for this event, which is now worldwide.
Even in this early season, you just see the different style there. Cambridge a bit longer forwards with their bodies, and that extra power they're generating, they're just starting to move away a little bit. Just a couple of feet, maybe.
Certainly, despite their considerable physical length, Cambridge have shown their ability to be very quick out of the first 10 or 20 strokes, but that's not where the race is won. It's the rhythm that's critical, and Oxford are certainly responding stroke for stroke at this stage.
It's a very even start, and so far, distance between the two sets of blades. And we're now looking from our camera by Beverley Brook, which is on the Surrey station. So we're looking down on Cambridge, nearer the camera. And the bend coming up is in the advantage of their opposition from Oxford.
Both the crews have settled down into their cruise paces now, and Oxford have pulled back. I think Oxford are going just a little bit quicker than Cambridge. They're rating 36, probably stroke for stroke.
As Cambridge have got just the initiative, and they need to do that because the next bend, which will come up in the next minute and a half, will give Oxford about a third of a length and will certainly bring them level. Cambridge have just got the initiative and have got a fraction of perhaps a third of a length. They're at 36 to Oxford's 35. Cambridge will be happy at this stage, but the steering is the first thing to look at.
Neil is a very aggressive cox. Last year, the Ices and Goldie crews clashed all the way down the course. This one here, he's going to be trying to push Cambridge out of the side of the bend. He wants the fastest bit of river, the bit that's in the middle. He also wants to push Cambridge as wide as he can.
This is looking from our camera on a catamaran, which is following the cruise up towards Crabtree Reach.
And the umpire is warning Oxford to Middlesex. It's the first time he's intervened. He's indicated that if they don't, he'll drive his launch right up on top of them. He thinks this will be either an incentive or a discouragement because the effect will be to drag the boat back. He's warning Oxford again. Oxford trying to crowd the bend.
Yes, O'Donnell trying to hold his line before turning, and there's a clash of blades there.
He's really done his crew no favours at all there, because if you see where they've gone now, they've gone off. He's had to steer hard away from them, and they've probably lost a few feet there.
That's probably a classic example of how not to involve yourself in a clash, because applying the rudder acts like a brake. He's also now, the umpire, warning Cambridge over towards their station on Surrey, and he's being very firm. You can hear him saying Cambridge to go to Surrey. Cambridge were trying to come back on top of them.
And I think Oxford are coming back through now. They're still holding this distance. Cambridge maybe a third of a length up, but I think Oxford have the confidence. They've rode a lot of people down in training, rode from behind, and the longer the race goes on, I think the happier Oxford will be.
That, of course, goes back to last year when there was a clash at roughly around this stage, and Cambridge reacted much more quickly than Oxford. Andrew Lindsay in particular said we've got to expect a clash and we've got to learn how to react from it, and we intend to do so.
But you know, Cambridge have definitely come out of this first mile better. They've kept about a third of a length, which means they've actually gone another third of a length further because they've rode around the outside of the bend.
I think Oxford have just pushed a move in there. Their rate's just gone up. You can just see the blades going in a bit. They're just taking a few more strokes every minute. That makes the boat go faster. They're trying to get through Cambridge here.
And that's been confirmed by the rates. Cambridge at 33, Oxford at 35. They definitely had a push to try and stay on terms, because the next big bend is going to be Cambridge's favour. Oxford being warned again because they're trying to push Cambridge over, trying to make sure that Oxford keep the majority of the tide.
I think Oxford are paying for this push early on. The push they've just done, they're slipping back a little bit now.
Well, that was the problem last year. 3:37 for Cambridge at the milepost, 3:38 for Oxford, 1 second between the crews. But the early pushes can sometimes prove to be decisive at the end of the day.
They can, and certainly the relationship between the crews at Hammersmith is very important. Now, coming into this next bend, this has put Cambridge in a very significant position. They've got perhaps 2/3 of a length, and they've got a big bend coming their way. It will be very important to them how they handle the next 2 minutes of the race, because they've really got to pounce on Oxford as they come in towards Hammersmith Bridge.
I think Cambridge are almost out to a length lead now. This as it always is in this race, a crucial time at 2/3 of a length, 3/4 of a length lead. It's vital for the crew that's behind to keep in contact. They must keep touch.
And this, traditionally, all but one of Cambridge's successes came from the Surrey station in this run of 6, and it's at this point, approaching Hammersmith Bridge, that has proved decisive for them.
It's such an important point, because if Cambridge can get away, if they can just get clear water, then they can dominate the rest of the race. It makes it very difficult for the crew behind to get back on terms. The umpire warning Cambridge again. What Cambridge are trying to do is now to start to push Oxford wide. They obviously want a good line into the bridge, Cambridge, but also if they can push Oxford onto the outside of it, it makes it even more of an advantage for them. Cambridge now beginning to push, because this is where the bend starts to turn into their favour.
That was Harris Depository we just went past.
That's right. Oxford are desperately struggling to stay in touch. I just think their blade work is a little bit ragged. What that means is they're less efficient. So for the same boat speed, they're using more energy. Obviously, as the race goes on, they'll be getting more tired. And at some point, Oxford are going to pay for that.
The Cambridge success has been based on the quality of the rhythm and the length of their stroke, Chris.
Indeed, and at the moment they're really holding together well. I think there has been some question about how the very tall men, this Josh West at 6'9", Kieran West at 6'8" at 6, tremendous pressure on them to hold the rhythm. But Cambridge have got to make an impression. Their advantage is really in the next minute and a half.
Here they go, under Hammersmith Bridge, and we've got another good contest on our hands here.
Oxford must stay with the overlap. Cambridge must try and break it.
Oxford look to have gone a little bit wide through the bridge there. They really wanted to be leaning as far as they can on Cambridge, trying to push Cambridge out the side of the stream.
Wonderful shot as the flotilla comes round behind the boats. Tim Vuga holding a nice, easy rhythm.
6'7½". I think he's the second largest man to have stroked the boat race crew. Gavin Stewart, I think, the largest for Oxford back in the Mutiny year, but he's had a lot of experience stroking University of Northeastern University in America, and he's really setting these big men up behind him.
Okay, and it looks like Cambridge have just slipped a little bit more. They're almost at clear water now. Oxford, this is their last ditch thing, I think. Here they must get back in contact now.
And this is always a difficult decision for the cox of the boat, which is behind, is does he come in behind the leading boat briefly?
That's right. There's an argument that at this point what Oxford should really do is settle in, cruise along, and then try and push round their final bend when Cambridge will have to go back to their own station. It doesn't actually work like that.
That's the armchair pundit view. I think when you're actually in the boat, it isn't. And the other problem, of course, is the disruption you get from the water being thrown back by the oars. What we call the puddles of the blades in front is very disruptive. You can feel it running underneath your oar blade. It makes it hard to grip the water. But Cambridge now have certainly got clear water. It looks about a length and 2/3, perhaps a length and a half to a length and 2/3. They've got what they want at this stage, but they can't rest on their laurels. They can't afford to let Oxford get a sniff of the Barnes Bend. Oxford have now got to hold on for perhaps 3 minutes.
That's right. I mean, it's still actually quite early in the race. They're almost not quite halfway yet. In terms of the effort they put in, both crews will be, would be happy to see the finish now. It's always possible that one of the people in the leading boat will have done too much. Chris talked about 1980. Oxford have to hope for that sort of thing now.
So let's get a coxing view from Gary Herbert.
Cambridge looking very nice now. They're long and loose, and Oxford just looking back. Neil O'Donnell really has to keep his crew long in the water. He's got to make sure their heads are up. The heads are sort of flagging a bit. The arms are just going at the finish. But looking ahead at Cambridge, flat water. They can just relax. They've got about a length of clear water now. And I guess Vian, Sharif now is just calling her crew into a loose rhythm and to enjoy the rest of the race.
Not record times this year, but another efficient row and another good contest.
Indeed, and I think Vian Sharif, who Gary was talking about, has done a jolly good job. She's the youngest person here. She's very little experience, probably less relative than any of the rowers, and she's steered immaculately, really, under pressure. Now Cambridge are in the position to relax a bit, though they won't want the gap to close. They just want to keep Oxford where they are.
20 years old on Monday for the record, and here is Colin Ettingshausen, huge experience disappointed in the 96 Olympics, which is one of the reasons he wanted to come back and row at Oxford to end on a success. And the American there, Crotty, really feeling it.
I think that's right. I mean, Oxford have got a lot of good guys, they've got a lot of good internationals in the boat. It just shows what a good system Cambridge have got running here. They're just rowing better. It doesn't matter what you have by way of talent. If the crew rows better, they'll go faster.
And it was also hurting Andrew Lindsay in the 7 seat, it looked, Chris.
He's such a committed competitor, Andrew. He's a great rower. He's rowing for Britain, and they really thought they got it right this year. But Cambridge have gone on their own quiet way. As I said at the opening, really, there is a difference in the way that Cambridge are rowing, and I think over the boat race course in particular, it makes a difference. You can just see that with the Oxford crew, there just isn't that impulse off the finish. The blade's just not drawn through that last inch or two, which in Cambridge just gives the boat that little extra impulse, that little bit more run. If you get an extra inch of run every stroke of the boat race course, it gives you the best part of a length for nothing. And Cambridge are just sweeping it on by, using this considerable length. They're 6'6.5" average. I can remember even 30 years ago, we'd have thought a man of 6'6" in the bow seat was absurd.
Chiswick steps times, 10:10 for Oxford, for Cambridge, 10:17 for Oxford, so it's gone up to 7 seconds, the difference between the two crews, and it's increasingly showing, isn't it? It looks as though Cambridge are continuing to go away here.
That's right. This is a pretty miserable time, I think, for the Oxford guys. They know basically they've got 5 or 6 minutes to show some pride, but ultimately that's what they're racing for here.
I think Jonny made the comment that it's Cambridge's system, and we haven't been so fortunate in being able to, perhaps attracts the wrong phrase, but we've had less oarsmen from outside the university coming in from abroad and elsewhere. We've had some very distinguished ones, but Cambridge has had to develop its own rowers. And Toby Wallace at Baillieu, for example, is a hockey player who learnt to row entirely at Cambridge, and we've had 1 or 2 oarsmen for the last few years who've learnt entirely at Cambridge, which is good for the sport, actually.
Well, interestingly enough, the comment has been made by a number of the men at Cambridge to say that it's a much more even crew, and at times they've been faster than last year's crew, which of course broke all the records, but the tide then was different. Sometimes, those statistics can be misleading.
That's right. I think these times are still pretty quick. Last year was an exceptionally fast Cambridge crew and exceptionally fast conditions. I suspect that even though these times are a bit behind last year, that it's still going to be a very quick race.
But that emphasises the point that they thought this crew might even be faster or better than last year's crew. In spite of
I think that's right. Although they didn't have the big stars, the big thing about this race is it's not so much the best people you've got in your boat, but the worst people. If that makes sense. They're the limiting factor.
Just listen to the noise from the banks. Huge support, packed crowds all the way down. Toby Wallace is going to be a second success for him. Tom Stallard, Brad Crombie, who's going to go into the record books, not many with the number of successes he's had. Joshua West, Ellis, down to Kieran West. Graham Smith, second success for him, and Tim Vuga and Vian Sharif. First successful lady, Eleanor Hollis, for the record in the boat race if Cambridge maintain this.
Certainly, Lady Hollis is the leading women's rowing school, coached by the redoubtable Beryl Crockford. There we see Oxford.
Charlie Humphreys, Henrik Nilsson, Dan Snow, Toby Ayer with the sunglasses, Martin Crotty, American international, Morgan Crooks, Canadian international. But the internationals, there are more of them in the Oxford boat, 5-3. The advantage very much with Cambridge.
Cambridge are just cruising it now.
Under Barnes Bridge.
And this is a big margin, actually. That's probably 4 or 5 lengths. The Oxford are really struggling now.
And I think the conclusion must be that Cambridge have excelled themselves and Oxford must have rowed below what they're capable of. I think we all thought that this was a crew, perhaps Cambridge we thought was at least as good as theirs went before. And I know a little of the times that they were doing up at Nottingham, and they certainly performed well. But I think, even as a Cambridge man, I could see the virtues of this Oxford crew, which was definitely very quick. But Cambridge have really grabbed this. The training is really now coming through and showing what they're capable of.
You can see from the map that they're on the final bend, which is the sharpest bend, and Cambridge in total control. Neil O'Donnell trying to encourage his men, but it is just not possible for Oxford from here. unless something quite extraordinary happens to the Cambridge boat.
It's always very difficult if you think you're. I mean, I think Oxford genuinely thought they had a good chance this year. That on paper they probably are the faster crew in terms of their pedigrees. If you think you're the faster crew, and then you find yourself in almost an unwinnable position, it's always that much more depressing. And I'm sure this is not a great time for them, this last 3 or 4 minutes.
There was a quiet confidence in the other camp, and once again it's a question of getting it right on the day. Oxford certainly tailed off quite a lot in this last week.
Yeah, I mean, Cambridge appear to have got better almost every day this week, and a lot can happen in a week of rowing. Oxford have been faster probably throughout the last 4 months or so. Unfortunately, the race was today rather than.
That actually is a comment which we could have made in the last 2 years. Cambridge, under the tutelage of Robin Williams, with help from others, of course, and particularly Harry Mahon, have really got it right. And there's no doubt that they've taken this race right from the start.
And it's an extremely fast time in these conditions without the support from Father Thames of last year. And the distance gets further and further, it seems. Real sympathy for at least 2 people in the Oxford boat, Charlie Humphreys and Andrew Lindsay. We'll be losers again, Henrik Nilsson as well.
It's interesting going from it. When I was around, we won most of the time, and it didn't really occur to us what it would be like to be part of a losing scene. And now we're beginning to see what that's like, and it becomes very depressing when you see crews that you think have got a good chance of winning, and then they lose. It's going to be very hard for Oxford to turn this round. Over the next few years.
That was certainly our observation at Cambridge. We knew we had to be significantly faster to try and overcome the Oxford run of victories.
And they come to the finish. Cambridge have done it again. 7th successive victory, and Brad Crombie with arm aloft. Oxford unable to end this sequence. And of course the last time, Chris, in 1930, when they went on to get the 7th victory, it went on to be 13.